Presidential Scholars Program is so important because one of the main reasons that students don't finish or complete their time at MC because of a lack of connection to the college or not feeling as if they're a part of a community. And so this will give us an opportunity to really support them from start to finish in whatever decisions they're making, to help them have mentorship, to provide supports for themselves financially and academically, so they really become a part of a community. And by being a presidential scholar, they create their own community within the larger MC body.
Receiving a Montgomery College Foundation Scholarship has benefited me as a student returning back to school because it allows me to give more time and put more energy into my studies, thus making for a more fulfilled and more productive student experience. The Presidential Scholars Program will benefit students as it will give them an enhanced level of confidence knowing that their ambitions and their academic performance has been appropriately recognized and rewarded.
The Presidential Scholars Program will make a great impact on this community for years to come. Not only from the standpoint of trained workforce for the business community, you'll have a better standard of living for the community as a whole, and certainly the business community and the community at large will benefit from a better educated workforce and a better standard of living for the entire community. That's what we need here in Montgomery County.
Good afternoon, my colleagues and friends. Thanks to each of you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I am Sherwin Colette, Senior Vice President for Administrative and Fiscal Services, and I am delighted to welcome each of you to this historic event that is part of our ongoing celebration of Black History Month. In my role as the Senior Vice President for Administrative and Fiscal Services, I have the awesome blessing of working with the talented employees who lead and support work across the offices of Human Resources and Strategic Talent Management, Information Technology, Facilities, Business Services, and Public Safety. We are committed to ensuring that our innovations and operations across all of AFS are student-centered and aligned with the 7 truths to a common student experience. These 7 truths are that students will start smart, maintain a foundation of support opportunities, get connected, build community, enhance the classroom experience, encourage students every step of the way, and help them plan to cross the finish line. Success in initiatives such as the Presidential Scholars Program helps us to honor and fulfill our commitment to these truths. So for today's program, we have assembled 7 distinguished individuals from across diverse programs across the college to engage in this timely and important discussion that we have titled Champions of Success, Investing in African-American Excellence. Before the panel begins, however, I would like to invite Dr. Carmen Poston-Travis, Director of Student Affairs and Initiatives, to provide more information on the Presidential Scholars Program, its present state, and how each of us can help to support the program.
Thank you, Sherwin, Mr. Colette. In honor of Black History Month, I would like to quote the late, great African-American poet Langston Hughes' poem, Harlem, that poses the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over like syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Well, at MC, I believe that it doesn't. Through the Presidential Scholars Program, dreams can be realized through deliberate action and by dismantled barriers. Those same barriers that our African-American males face are those barriers that Langston Hughes was thinking about when he wrote that poem. As we look at the foundational interventions in this slide, the goals of the Presidential Scholars Program is to increase the representation of African-American men in careers and industry with life-sustaining salaries, and also to demonstrate, the intention and a solution for addressing systemic racism and other barriers to success. So with that in mind, the program is deliberate in its design with key foundational interventions that are proven effective strategies. And they are academic and support services, student support services, financial aid and basic needs supports, mentorship and coaching, and experimental learning and opportunities. But I am also excited to share that we have adopted the Montgomery County Educational Partnership Framework for Montgomery County Career Competencies. And that is a collaboration between Montgomery College, the Universities of Shady Grove, and Montgomery County Public Schools, which is on the slides. And these competencies are leadership, career development, team and collaboration, digital technology, professionalism and work ethic, equity and diversity, critical thinking and problem solving, oral and written communication, and personal well-being. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you in this next slide some of our scholars. We have, in no particular order, Thaddeus, Isaiah, Chuka, Remolio, Clinton, Andre, Emmanuel, Malik, Zion, Maurice, Jamal, Joshua, George, Jonathan, John, Mark, Del Christoph, Charles, Daniel. And so these are our scholars, and I believe I might have Miss Marcus. And you will be happy to know that they are tuning in via this web. So if any of our scholars are on, just say hello in the chat. So that's all about the Scholars Program. But what we're here today is to hear a discussion from an exciting panel that Sherwin talked about or alluded to earlier. So I'm not going to delay our time with that, but I want to ask the audience to place your questions in the chat for review upon the completion of the panel. And if we have time, we will get to those questions. For some reason, if we don't have time to entertain any of your questions, we will take those questions and make sure that they are answered and supplied later on. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, and that is Brandon Cs Wallace, who is an associate professor at Montgomery College and a faculty associate at Johns Hopkins University. In addition to his work in international curriculum writing, public speaking, extra and extramural presenting, and authoring several publications, he serves on multiple national assessments, including standing appointment on the Reading Committee for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. He has also received many awards for his work in education, most notably the Diane Toblin Award for Excellence in Teaching from the Johns Hopkins School of Education, the Award for Professionalism from Montgomery College, and the Bowie Black Male Educators and Leaders Alliance Outstanding Professor Award in 2020 from Bowie State University. Brandon is the executive board member for Johns Hopkins University chapter of Phi Delta Kappa, and his research interests include English, language and literature, qualitative methodology, multiculturalism, assessment theory, university design for learning, specified or education, specialized education, behavioralism, and restorative justice. Brandon lives in Prince George's County, Maryland, and enjoys leisurely reading the works of Toni Morrison, John Milton, Janet Elliott, James Baldwin, and Damon Young. So this is why, as you heard all those accolades, that I am very excited and proud to introduce and welcome Mr. Brandon Wallace. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Poston Travis. I really appreciate that. If you ever grew up in a Black church like I did, and when the guest speaker starts getting their bio read, you get a little excited, you get a little happy. So thank you so much for bringing some of that joy into my dreary, little drowsy Thursday now. Good grief, where did the week go? I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for joining. I just cannot wait. I've been looking forward to this all week long to have this really rich conversation. I know I don't have a lot of time. I only have 25 minutes, so I'm just going to jump right into it. We know that there's a lot of data in our world, especially today, that would suggest that African-American males are not successfully enrolling and graduating from community colleges. In my recent research, I wrote this: since the global pandemic of COVID-19, fewer African-American males are enrolling in community colleges, while enrollment in community colleges fell by 10% overall. Enrollment among African-American males in community colleges declined by nearly 20%. And that's NCES data and quad data from 2020. And so we know that this is a real problem, a real issue, but we also know that hidden behind some of that qualitative data are stories, rich narratives that I'm sure some of our panelists are going to share with us today. And I'm excited to introduce some of our panelists with that context in mind. And even before I even introduce them, I have to say this about Dr. Carmen Poston-Farmer. Thank you so much for bringing this all together. We appreciate you. It can't be done without all of us. And so I honor you today. Thank you so much for that. And in one of our recent conversations, I actually took some notes. And as we were sharing some thoughts back and forth, she said, among so many challenges, I believe these students are subjects dependents of a long line of ancestry who are still reeling, suffering, and struggling from generational cycles of trauma, psychological and physical, inflicted in this country that manifests through behavior and experiences. And so, as we end our Black History Month, understanding that Black history is a part of every month, right? But as we end February, I want to honor our panelists, our dynamic panelists, and share a little bit more about you with them. I'm excited because we have an entire amazing, phenomenal panel in that of Dr. Brown, Dr. Benjamin, Coach George Rice III, Mr. Stephen Taylor, Dr. Marvin Mills, and Mr. Terrence Terry Evelyn. So I'm gonna bring you all, if I can, thank you for getting me set up. As we all start pinning each other, I would love for us to share 60 seconds or less, a little bit about you and your background. And we'll start with Dr. Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin, talk a little bit about you, your background, and your academic journey.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm really honored to be asked to participate this afternoon. My background is just as I typically describe myself to people. I'm a brother from Houston. You know, I've been fortunate enough to I did my undergraduate and both my PhD work at the University of Texas. And unlike Professor Wallace, I'm a firm believer in quantitative methodology. It's one of the things that we talk about. My area of research is actually around the application and use of emotional intelligence for college success. And I've done a lot of work with the Gates Foundation and other organizations looking specifically at African-American, Latine, and Native American college students and looking at how these strengths are employed. When I started at Montgomery College, I started off in counseling and advising, and it's probably, in terms of my vocational development, probably one of the single most important roles that really enabled me to go from professor to chair to dean. So again, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Benjamin. Mr. Stephen Taylor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I originally came from Rochester, New York, and attended Howard University. Unfortunately, unlike some of my colleagues, I did not complete my undergraduate matriculation for a variety of reasons. However, since that time, I have pretty much, tried to make sure that anybody that I came in contact with, if they wanted to try to go to school, go through school, to try to be a conduit, try to be a bridge, try to get them connected, and to try to give them the opportunity to succeed. And then even, again, I started working at Montgomery College in 1986. So I've had an opportunity to interact with a lot of students over those many years in a variety of ways. And again, from my professional standpoint, I see them when they come in the morning. I see them when they leave at night. I see them when they're walking around, they're lost. And then I see them when they cross the stage. And I've had an opportunity to make some relationships with some students, and I may see them today, many years after they've graduated and they went on to pursue, further degree at another institution, but they love Montgomery College and they like the fact that they were able to connect and they were able to be successful.
Love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. Dr. Marvin Mills, looking sharp over there. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Marvin Mills. I will tell you, I'm very fortunate because I was born and raised in the mountains of West Virginia, but for the grace of God, I could have been a retired chemical worker in the Chemical Valley in Charleston, West Virginia. However, with a lot of mentorship and great parents, I matriculated through an HBCU. I was very fortunate enough to have mentors there that guided me not only in my academics, but also I was an ROTC participant. Was fortunate enough to be commissioned as an officer in the military. Served 8 years in numerous places around the world. Wonderful experience. Once I got out of that, I had some other mentors that led me through my matriculation into facilities management. I have been worked in a K-12 school district. I've worked in state government. I've worked in city and county government. And this is my fourth institution of higher education. And so I think I have an affinity for higher education. And I will have to quote Mr. Taylor there that a couple of the best times on the campus is when we first start in the fall and we get the students in. But the best time is actually commencement, when you see those wonderful students graduate. They're so excited. Their parents are happy. The families are excited. The best day of the world. Best day of the world. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. It's one of my favorite days too. Thank you so much for sharing. Mr. Terry Evelyn, let's hear it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I would like to speak specifically to our scholars who joined us today. My name is Terry Evelyn, and currently I'm the college-wide director of facilities here at Montgomery College. My background is in engineering, but I want to tell you a bit about me, not as an academic, but as a person. As you might have gathered by now from my accent, I adopted the United States as my country. I was born in the only English-speaking country in South America, Guyana. Many of you might have known it. We had a reputation of having Jim Jones, who killed a number of people there a number of years ago. I came from a very poor background. My parents never finished high school, but the one thing my father taught me is that he only knew one universal key that opened doors regardless of where you are, and that was education. And that was the one thing that spurred me on. I grew up and I became focused on the fact that I had to be educated because I wanted to do better than my parents did. They did their very best for me, but I knew that there was a large world out there and I wanted to be a part of this. And I worked hard, just like many of you are doing right now, to get to where I am today. I studied in London. I worked, I applied, I got scholarships. My parents couldn't afford that. But along the way, I had a lot of help, a lot of people to lean on. And then I moved from England to Canada to do my postgraduate work. And then I continued that work in the United States. So the message to you, young men, is that anything is possible. But what's important is you need to need it more than us. We're going to be here for you, but you are not going to make any success or any progress unless you're committed. You know, my one piece of advice is cultivate and foster core values for yourself. They allow you to commit yourself, they give you discipline, they ground you, but more importantly, they create boundaries beyond which you know you can't go. Hence, you succeed, okay? But it's a real pleasure being here today. I'm excited just to be a part of this program.
Thank you so much, Terry. And I hope that y'all are already writing notes down, because I know I am. Thank you so much for that intro. Coach George Rice III, you got to say the third for this one. Tell us a little bit more about yourself now.
Good afternoon. I am George E. Rice III. There are four of us total. One is now the George Seniors with the ancestors, but I am originally born and raised in the metropolis of Toledo, Ohio, which is Northwest Ohio. I'm an alumnus of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. My bachelor's is in psychology. My master's is in mental health counseling. My first job out of undergrad was teaching middle school math and science. And if you know anything about where you were and what you thought as a young man when you were 7th or 8th grade, you realize the need for more of us to be in front of them. And so from that journey, I had two students ask me, well, why do you want to be a teacher? And I said, well, how many Black teachers, period, have you had since you've been in kindergarten? They said, oh, 3 or 4. I said, well, guess what? Guess how many I had from kindergarten through 12? And I said, kindergarten through 12, guess how many Black teachers I had? They said, how many? I said, 0. But I've been raised by, I've been raised, I'm actually a 3rd generation educator. It's funny, I'm a 2nd generation college student, but I'm actually a 3rd generation educator. And even though my grandparents and my great grandparents were formally educated, they were educated. Y'all would catch that at the red line.
That's right.
And so one of the things that if I say to any young person that I encounter, we all have gifts. And I truly believe that education is a birthright, regardless of how you get it. But one thing I always encourage, especially our young men, is to, find your gift, use it to serve, use it to solve a problem, and understand that your legacy, the legacy that we leave is not a marathon or a sprint, it's a relay race. So we're in it to pass the baton. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Coach. And I have a grandmother, her name is Inez. She's a tobacco farmer from Wilmington, North Carolina. Never went to college, no higher education, barely got out of high school. She's the smartest person I've ever met in my life, Inez. And of course, last but absolutely not least, Dr. Andre Brown. Come on and introduce yourself for the audience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. Again, I'm Dr. Andre Brown, originally from North Carolina and grew up in New York and then back in North Carolina. So pretty much an East Coast guy. Currently here in DC, I live in DC. Been in Montgomery for a couple of years, 3 years now, which has been really exciting. I originally went to Elizabeth City State, North Carolina, and then for my bachelor's. Then I went to University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, down the street. And then I went to Seton Hall in New Jersey, and then came to Howard for internship at the Counseling Center in the DC courts in the Howard Hospital. And then I started my first teaching job at Hunter College in New York City. And since there, I moved to Oregon and then back to DC and found myself here at Montgomery College. So one thing I would add, and I appreciate what Brother Terrence was saying, as far as one thing I've learned around education is that you have no idea about where it's going to take you in the pursuit of it, and the benefits and the ways that it changes and shapes your life. Originally, I thought I was going to be an engineer. That's what I was gearing up for in high school. It was engineering. I was working on spaceships and all that kind of stuff, and ended up at Elizabeth City, no engineering program. You got to do something. Psychology, here I come, right? And just got to ride it all the way out. And so sometimes you don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know what the journey is. You meet so many wonderful people in the process. And you also realize how many of those paths are crossed and people that know you. And our circle is very small. It's a very small circle. And I'm excited to be here with everyone tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. We really appreciate those words for sure. I'm going to encourage everybody who's in the audience to start writing your questions in the chat box. I only have time for probably one big question for this entire magnanimous panel. But if you are in the audience and you have a question for any one of the panelists, please feel free to put it in the chat box. And I promise somebody, Joan or somebody, is going to tell me what to do next. So Dr. Benjamin, I'm going to actually start this all questions for everybody, but here's the big question that I have for everybody. And Dr. B, you'll be up first. Essentially, the Presidential Scholars Program has 4 key interventions: experiential learning and opportunities like that, academic and student support services, mentorship and success coaching, as well as financial aid and basic need assistance. Out of all those really good staples of intervention that we know are evidence-based, right? Out of all those, were any of those levers for you to be successful as an undergrad or your master's program in doctoral, like at any point of your educational matriculation, did you use any of those resources that Presidential Scholars Program offers throughout your matriculation and education?
Absolutely. Mentorship. And I was fortunate enough to have two parents with advanced degrees. So I had the mentorship from siblings. I had the mentorship from my parents. However, once I stepped foot as a young brother with a high top fade in 1984 on the campus at the University of Texas, what I realized is at an institution with over 45,000 students, there were more Black male athletes on the campus the non-athletes, and the number of faculty that I had access to serve as mentors, it was a really small population of, but fortunately, even if it was at times, I still feel quite undeserved, they saw something in me. And they served in even days, and I can say even days when I really did not deserve it, they stuck with me. And so as I have gone through my career, both serving as a mentor, that's been a very, very important role that I've liked to scaffold other students at the college. But I do want to say this one thing around mentorship and to put a slightly different spin on it. To me, mentorship, when I mentor people, it's just the lessons that I've learned from the college mistakes that I've survived. However, one of the things that we also have to work to develop is sponsorship for people. Mentorship is important because it will, it flattens out the learning curve. But also what's necessary are people who can get on the phone and get you these jobs, can get you the access. And it's also, and as so many of us alluded to in our initial statement, it's about access. One of the primary functions of this college degree is access, and getting us, everybody knows I'm a huge Hamilton fan, and it's getting us in the room where it happens. Mentorship, mentorship, mentorship.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin. Mr. Taylor, same question. There are some interventions that the Presidential Scholarship Program offers: experiential learning, academic and student support, mentorship and success coaching, as well as financial aid and basic needs support. Did you take advantage of any of those interventions or supports as you were matriculating?
I'd had to hit the first one, the experimental learning and opportunities portion. Again, oftentimes, a lot of African-American males don't do because they're not given the opportunity to do, or they don't believe that they can do. But again, in my early time at Howard University, I had an opportunity to lead a couple of efforts just from a nugget, just from an idea, just from a thought. But in order to make it happen, like a vice president or somebody that had some power had to bless it to let us, and even to give us an opportunity to fail. And I often tell people a story in my earlier days when I was an entrepreneur. We were trying to start a nightclub, and we went to a guy, and we went because we were going to pitch our business plan. We pitched our business plan, and basically he challenged us and said, well, if you do this, then this is what I'll do. And basically, again, we went through it. We gave it a good college try, but we failed. And at the end of that, it was just like, y'all failed because you didn't ask for enough money. You had a good business plan.
Nice.
You came to ask a person that could, quote unquote, help you get over a rough patch, but you didn't ask for enough money. But again, that person, again, gave us the opportunity to fail. And sometimes in order to succeed, you have to fail. But as you fail, either you have to have the wisdom to know why you fail, or somebody's got to stop you and kind of go, okay, the next time you do this, here's some things you don't want to do, and here's some things that you might want to consider that you do want to do. But again, it goes back to the opportunity. If you don't have the opportunity, you can't move forward.
I love that. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I will say I don't know a lot about nightclubs, but I look at everybody laughing at me now. But I will say this: I do know that failure is succeeding in so many ways. It's just how you look at it in a lot of ways. Dr. Mills, experiential learning, academic and student support services, mentorship, coaching, financial aid, basic needs. Did you touch any of these levers of intervention success as you were matriculating through your college experiences?
Oh my goodness, mentorship and success coaching was one of the keys. And I'm going to have to give you guys just a very quick story. As a senior in high school, I didn't really think I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go out and work in the chemical factory because those guys were making big money back in the late 60s. My grandfather, who was a retired coal miner, had a company, a small company to renovate houses. We were renovating a house and he had us on the roof. In the middle of the summer, 90 some degrees, we're taking the shingles off a roof and I'm carrying shingles up on the roof. And this is before they had the power thing. So we were carrying shingles on our shoulder up a ladder. And I said, Pops, I said, this is awful hard work. And he said, grandson, if you don't go to and get your education, this is what you're going to be doing all your life.
That's right. That's right.
And so my grandfather, who only had a second grade education, and actually his grandsons, myself and my brother, taught him how to read, inspired me to go to college. Now, during college, I had several professors that, and I remember them to this day. Dr. Barbara Oden, who was my biology professor, Major Randall White, he was my senior ROTC instructor. Those two folks made sure I had the right formulations in my mind to where I wanted to go. Make sure you know what you want to do and then shoot for that. Once I got in the Army, I had a very good mentor. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Donald Williams, very good Black guy, and he made sure that there was some young Black lieutenants, and he made sure that we had the right ideas about how to be successful in the Army as far as leadership, and also how to deal with some of the issues that was going on back in the 70s in the military. Once I got out of the military, there was an attorney that I just had to meet when I was in NAACP. His name was Thomas Kelly. And he formulated my ideas about how to be a successful person who advocated for those who were less fortunate than myself. And then I had a very good friend who got me into thinking about what I could do to help the education process. And his name was Dr. Peter Flynn. And he was a superintendent of schools in two places where I worked. And actually, he hired me as one of the directors of maintenance and got me on my road to supporting education through my efforts in keeping the facilities up to straight. So I would tell you that the mentorship and success coaching got me where I am today. And I tell you what, I was very blessed, very blessed.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Mills. Terry, I'm coming to you next. Which interventions or supports did you take advantage of as you matriculated through your educational or even vocational journey?
Coming from where I came from, my background, all four of those interventions were important to me. But if I were to rank them, I would have to say financial support, simply because that opened the door. Those are the other three interventions only became necessary after the door opened. If the door never opened, because of financial support, then those interventions would have been useless. And it started very early on. I grew up in what we call the country in my case. It was 100 miles from the capital. And when I got my first opportunity to go to university, there was a condition that I had to do a year of internship. And I had all the grades and everything, but that internship was in the capital city of Georgetown, which is about 100 miles from where I grew up. My parents didn't have the resources, nor did I know anybody in Georgetown. But a friend of the family extended financial support and accommodation for me. And that was the start of my journey, and I never looked back. So to me, the opportunity to have someone to support you, and the assumption is you're going to be committed, you're going to be disciplined, you're going to be focused, but that need for financial support is what gives you that initial effort, because sometimes that's all you need. A push start, and if you don't get that, if that opportunity doesn't come, then you look back on the days, what could have been. Fortunately for me, and I think that's why this program means so much to me, the need to help a young man get to that next level. So to me, I rank them, I would put financial support at the top.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate that. Coach, we're coming to you. What kind of supports or interventions helped you the most?
Mentorship, without a doubt, but within the beautiful world of mentorship was fellowship. And when I say that, I know that the relationships that I was able to cultivate, whether it was with fellow students from all walks of life, to losing brothers, right? Not to losing brothers for financial, academic, and other things. You know, I had several classmates who were murdered, you know, and so understanding the value of fellowship and connection and connectivity and mentorship. Literally the director of our career services, he was really the one that made the light bulb turn on by philosophically smacking me upside the head. Because I had this big speech about what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up. And he says, okay, all of that's fine. And when I was 19, I used to say basically a lot. So I gave him this 5-minute speech about whatever. And all he heard was basically. He says, well, what do you want to do? I said, I have no idea. He says, okay, now we can have a conversation. So he put me on Front Street. But by being on Front Street, I was able to have access to all the other modes of transportation, success, and so on and so forth. So to me, that has been the most valuable and still remains the most valuable.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that, Coach. I really appreciate that. Dr. Brown, any supports or interventions you took a part of as you were matriculating throughout your college experiences?
Yeah, so I'm really having some flashbacks, you know, listening to everybody talk. And the thing that stood out to me at first was going to be the experiential, but I think the financial was the biggest piece because the finances really dictated my whole trajectory. So I knew coming out of high school, I realized, okay, well, I didn't want to be a preacher. I didn't want to work in the plant. I knew I wanted to do something. I'm trying to figure out my whole thing. And I said, well, I'm not going to play basketball. So let me figure out what's my angle. And so for me, it was education. I said, I can get more money by being smart than I would if I played ball or did some of the other things. And so going into, and I was supposed to go to Virginia Tech, and they messed with my money. I had a lot of scholarships, a lot of different schools I applied for. I was doing the engineering track. I was really geared up for that. And then I went, the financial aid wasn't right. And then I had to go to Elizabeth City. And I remembered I got a presidential scholarship which was a chancellor scholarship for Elizabeth City. It was a full ride. It was only $4,000, but that was a whole lot of money when you have no money. And we had kids leaving school once they got to school. And we were like, can nobody in your whole world come up with $500 to keep you in school? That's all you need. And the answer is like, no, I'm out, right? And so for me, once I got into school, once I got to the city, I remember having a conversation with my dad. We stood outside by this tree where the Sigma's plot is. And literally the conversation was, so is the money good? And you were like, yeah. You're like, you got somewhere to live? You're like, yeah. Y'all gonna feed him too? Yeah. I guess he's gonna be here. We go back to the house, get the stuff, and come back. I'm like, all right, that's what it is. And from here, it was good. He had given all he can give. I had siblings at home, and that was the baseline for everything else. And so he also promised to give me money every month, and he cut me off. That's supposed to be $20, but then he just stopped giving money. So I'm like, dude, you left me out here with nothing? But so for me, moving through college, I knew I was talented, right? I knew I could get support. So then if you wanted me, you had to pay me to be where I needed to be. Because I knew that it was all about me being able to have my finances in order. So I went to Eastern Shore. I was able to work as a graduate assistant. I was doing all this work. I had some money, enough to get me there. Seton Hall, the same thing. Got there, got some scholarships, worked on campus. And at one point, I was making as much money in graduate school, and this was my formula. My friend told me I was a walking spreadsheet the other week, so I guess it was true. It was literally, I don't want to be a burden on my family, my community, so I need to make as much money in school as I would at what I would be doing at home, right, at a regular job. As long as I made more money in school or could sustain my lifestyle, then I was able to continue going. And that was my own promise. I wasn't going to ask anybody if they didn't have it. And so, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to quit. I remember I went to internship at Howard, and I was on fellowships. I got some national fellowships. And so the other thing is, there's two things. One, getting those presidential or chancellor scholarships, getting the APA Minority Fellowship, different fellowships that I was able to get throughout time was a badge of honor for me. Right? I was proud that these people thought enough about what I was going to do and had done that is worth giving the investment into me. And so from an investment standpoint, I'm like, yeah, so then it also gives me a little more leverage when I'm on campus, because then it says, well, you don't like what I wrote, professor, whatever, but they just gave me $25,000 for writing the same exact thing. I'm going with the money. I'm gonna keep on writing and do what I need to do. You know, and then the other part is the finance was so important. I was trying to go to Howard, an internship. I couldn't get an apartment. Right? I was going all over DC trying to find an apartment. They said, well, you don't have any money. You don't have a job, no W-2s. I'm like, no, I have scholarship. Like, here's my money. One lady told me, she said, well, all the dope boys got money. And I'm like, well, if I'm a drug dealer, I wouldn't stay in this little crappy spot I'm trying to get into. So obviously I ain't selling dope. I'm just trying to live. But what I was able to do was go buy a house quicker than I was to rent an apartment, because I had support. I had people behind me. I had documents. I was able to prove my value financially. And that's something I always keep in mind moving forward. So we're talking about the President's Scholarship and our mentality is it takes money to do this, right? I done got pennies. I done got the candy jar. I done got the old lady pulling money out of her bra. Anything you think of, all these things will help. Like Brother George, what I'm talking about, right? And the sacrifices that people have made and invested into us as a collective is tremendous, and we want to keep doing that. But so everything is important. And I think for where we are right now, the finances for a lot of people is stopping the dreams and stopping getting on campus and staying there. You got to get them there, and we got to stay there.
Absolutely, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much. Two quick things. Number one, I've been trying to monitor the chat, the DMs, and I've been getting all that other good stuff. So I'm going to make sure that Joan Woods gets my literature review. Right now, I'm currently conducting literature review, qualitative methodology, and a narrative inquiry study about 6 African-American males who graduated from community colleges in the Mid-Atlantic region of the country. And so all the data that we shared earlier today, I'll give it to Joan, and you can ask Joan for it because there's plenty of it. And then more importantly, I've been looking at some of the comments and questions, and I'm going to tie this last question up kind of thematically. And I know that there's never any one event or one person that really gave you the motivation or really gave you the opportunity or really gave you the encouragement or whatever it was. But I would like everybody to answer this question. What was, in all the events and with all the people that have touched their lives, of course, in 60 seconds or less, can you share what one relationship or one event really changed your life to the catalyst of you becoming who you are today? I'm going to put that big question on my boss first, Dean Eric Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin, what would you respond to that question?
Actually, it was a very innocuous encounter. You know, I had my mentors. One day I'm sitting in a social psychology class at the University of Texas, dozing off, not paying attention. And a Latino brother, Dr. Manuel Ramirez, hands me back my test with a D+ on it. And he looks at me and he says, Mr. Benjamin, I expect more out of you than this. And I did not even know that Dr. Ramirez knew my name. And at that point, I knew that there were expectations on this campus and people were watching me, and it was time to step up. It was that one quick, brief conversation.
Thanks, Dr. Benjamin. Mr. Taylor, what one event or one person really changed your trajectory?
Well, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one. And I'll do it from the standpoint of, you know, now again, some of my colleagues are notable in their counseling abilities. But when you're coming through high school and you're getting ready to try to figure out what you're going to do and where you're going to go for college, and when your guidance counselor tells you that you either that you're not college material, or that you'll be better off if you apply here or you apply there. And I don't know how they do in other places. I know in my high school, they had a thing where around the guidance office, they had your name, and then they would put all the colleges that you got accepted to. And, you know, again, I got accepted to somewhere in North Dakota and Minnesota, and, you know, but when I finally got accepted to Howard University, and I got put up on the board, then every day I would just go by and look at my counselor and just look at him like, you know, and almost to this day, I always look at some of the people that I know that are in counseling, and I see, I saw earlier Denise Simmons Graves was on the line. And I see the love and the effort that they put into pushing and challenging their students and moving them forward. And I always kind of really hated that person, because I always thought, how could this person be in counseling? Because their job is to push and propel students forward, not to hold them down. So again, to some of the students that are on the line, it goes back to like the pursuit of happiness, where, you know, when Will Smith said, don't let anybody, you know, keep you away from your dream. If it's your dream, you have to pursue it and you have to move forward, but don't let anybody tell you what you can't do, and don't believe it. You can do what you want to do.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. I know I'm going to get yelled at for going over time, but this is too rich to let go. Now, Dr. Mills, share an event or a person who really helped change your trajectory.
Of course, I mentioned my grandfather, but the other thing that I can really remember was I was a sophomore in college, and I decided I was going to skip a class, genetics class. So I went to the student union and I was shooting pool. Up behind me comes Dr. Barbara Oden. I mentioned her before, and she said, Mills, if you don't get your, and this is what she said, if you don't get your ass to class, I'm going to make sure that Dr. Edwards fails you. You're too smart to be sitting in here coking and joking in the student union.
You really went to a HBCU, Dr. Mills.
I went to
really went to a HBCU.
Yes, sir, buddy. I mean, and so guess what? I said, I don't want to get on Dr. Oden's bad side. She ended up being the provost for the college. So that tells you how good she was. So, you know, so yeah, she put me back on the right track.
No, thanks for sharing that story. And in pedagogy and educational context, we call those warm demanders, warm demanders. So look that up, warm demanders, when you get a chance. Terry, 60 seconds or less, what was the one event or one person that really changed your life, changed your trajectory in terms of your educational or vocational pursuits?
I think I'd have to say my father. See, when I was growing up, there were no universities or colleges in my town. So if you wanted to go to university or college, I didn't have to go to another town. I had to go to another country. When you were applying for a scholarship, my country was a British country. It was not aligned to America, so everybody wanted to go to England. I remember the first time I decided that I picked the college that I wanted to go to, there was an application fee of £125. When you translate that into my currency, it was about $3,000, because the pound was that kind of currency at the time. And my father had to make a decision for the family, either pay for my application to college or use the funds to defray all the expenses. And he chose to pay my fees, my application fee, and that changed everything. If he had said no, then maybe it was all be history. But to me, that was most pivotal in terms of where I am today.
This is why I love, thank you so much for sharing. This is why I love qualitative data, because so oftentimes the quantitative data, right, the numbers don't tell these stories. They can never showcase these stories of Black fatherhood and all, just love and sacrifice. And so I appreciate that. Coach, what one event or one person that really changed the trajectory of your life?
Dr. Bill Norris, who I knew him as Bill. I chose him as my roommate my second semester freshman year, because my roommate my fall semester freshman year flunked out. Bill was a pre-med bio major. I said, okay, I picked my classes. All of my classes were early. And one thing you all know, if you're a pre-med major, STEM major on any campus, you're going to have an 8 o'clock class at least 5 days a week.
At least.
Either a lecture or a lab, right? And so we literally made a pact and said, okay, we're not going to be on the phone late. look, Monday through Friday, we're going to get into bed on time. You know, lights are out. We're not going to be on the phone. We're going to get rest. We're going to get up. We're going to beat everybody to the spot. That choice in a roommate alone, we talk about mentorship. That was fellowship. We held each other accountable. I went from a dismal performance my fall semester, my freshman year, to making the dean's list every single semester afterwards. And to this day, I gave him his flowers when I was in Atlanta in August. And I said, hey, man, thank you for accepting the invitation to be my roommate. Because without you, I don't know if I would have ever finished the way that I finished.
Love it. Thank you so much, Coach. Now, Dr. Brown, we're going to save the best. Now, I know you want to say Professor Brandon Wallace, but you don't need to do that today. Tell me another person.
Besides almost about to be soon to be Dr. Wallace, who actually did, and I'm gonna keep my time, but I'm gonna give you a shout out. Meeting Professor Wallace totally shifted my trajectory of teaching as a senior professor, right? Talented, skilled, and do things amazing in a way. I'm like, I need to watch this brother. I need to get with him so he can show me how to do my job better.
Appreciate
and you. And the other person that that really gave me some, I just did that because he owed me money. But the real person I want to talk about is Dr. And I just thought about it when you asked it, is Dr. Jimmy Jenkins Jr. He's a brother. He was the president of Elizabeth City State College. When I was there on campus, I met him. And I'm like, well, I'm a president scholar. And he was a cool brother, would eat in the cafeteria. He would talk to people. He was a Q. So he would have all the Qs come to his house and watch the games. I'm like, man, that's pretty good. But the thing that most impressed me, I told him one day, he would talk to you. Like, he literally would talk to you. And I'm like, I'm talking to the president of the school. This was, in my mind, a big, big deal. But he also had the building named after him on campus while he was president. Nice. The science building. I saw him when I called him. I was like, yo, Dr. Jenkins, you was a bad man. He like, what you about? And I'm like, so you trick these people into, as you build out the development plan for the next 20 years, the fiscal plan for the college projections, the first building we building is going to be your building with your name on it while you do lectures in the halls, and he also taught a class. And you're teaching while you're in school and you're the president. So when you leave, they can run you, whatever happens, you're good because your name is already on the wall. So that was a very impressive thing. He just retired. Even now, I think he was at Livingstone, just retired this year. So from then till now, he was fighting. He fought for his students. He fought against the things they were doing us in little country towns, fighting to make sure we got our just due as part of the university system. And he carried that on, and the legacy is tremendous. So he's someone that I see here and there, but when I do see him, and he actually remembers me. So I'm even impressed. He's like, why would I not remember you? Right? All these things we've done. But then the other part is, it also gave me put some in my spirit that I can be a college president. Right? I'm like, this is something that's doable. And that's a part of I don't know if it's still a part of my career trajectory now, but that's something where I said, well, I can do this because he did it. And there's nothing really that I can't do. And he's just a regular brother that just did his thing and took care of his family. So that's my guy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I really appreciate that on so many levels, for so many reasons, especially because representation matters. Representation absolutely matters. Dr. Karen Poston-Farmer, I'm going to be fired from my MC job because I know I'm way over time, but thank you, panelists, for this amazing opportunity to not even to scratch the surface, but more importantly, learn of you all, especially because I'm encouraged and inspired, and I feel like I can keep on running on. So I'm going to pass the ball back to Carmen Poston-Farmer. Thanks, Doc. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. And it's been a pleasure, a real absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Brandon. And I am sure that our guests, our attendees did not mind running over because the chat was just lit up and we got so many questions that we are going to get to at another time. It just says that we have an opportunity to do this again because I think that it was phenomenal to understand each of your lived experiences, but not even just your lived experiences, but your observed experience as successful people here at in higher education at this particular community college. So I just want to thank you all again for such a great and engaging discussion. We had so many questions, even a question from a student about how did you overcome prejudice, or how do you deal with that? But we're going to take those questions, and we're going to answer them at some point in time. Before we move forward, I'd like to acknowledge that Mr. Saul Graham is on today with us. And if any of you know Mr. Saul Graham, he was the president of our foundation's board and a prominent, successful business person in the community. And I am just pleased to say I know him personally. So thank you, Mr. Saul Graham, for being on. And I know you had a couple questions about the program, so I will follow up with you and make sure that you get all the answers that you need. So at this point in time, again, you all could just put your waves or hand claps in the chat and let this panel know how much we appreciate them. And it was just super. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Craig Iozo, and I hope, Craig, I'm pronouncing your name right.
Absolutely, it's fine.
And yes, excellent. He is our acting vice president for development and alumni relations, and he is also the executive director of the Montgomery College Foundation. So take it away, Craig.
Thanks. Well, thanks. Wow, it's shocking to just sit here and be overcome with not only the panelists, but all of the comments, and knowing that all of those students are sitting back here, just experiencing and reading them all and feeling the support. And I think that's what we do in fundraising and providing philanthropy is those students feel that, even though they don't often know who's giving that contribution. So what a wonderful discussion. Over the past couple of years, we've watched the Presidential Scholars Program go from concept to launch, and I'm just thrilled to see the new cohort of our first MC students to go through. So congrats to everyone, and congratulations for making it happen. I just want to take a quick opportunity to thank everyone that has already supported this program and supported our students. You've got us this far, so thank you. And then, of course, if you can give, if you can open the door, as Terrence said, we ask that you do so now. And of course, there's lots of ways you can do that. And specifically, faculty and staff of the college can create a $10,000 scholarship over 5 years, and that can be done and named, and it lasts in perpetuity. So that's just one way. And then obviously payroll deduction is another great way to support the program each paycheck. And you have the opportunity to join hundreds of folks that are already doing that. In addition, you just make a one-time gift with this QR code at the bottom of the screen. So no matter what level or what help you need to make a gift, we're always here to help you do that. So with that, thank you so much for having me. And it's a pleasure and an honor and privilege to be part of this. Dr. Brown, the Senior Vice President for Student Affairs, will have a few words as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And thank you to all the members of the college and the community who joined us today. What an outstanding group of panelists. What a great program. This is so very exciting. And I know as we look forward to welcoming Dr. Williams as the president of Montgomery College, when his tenure begins on Monday, February 28th, I believe he too will be pleased with the groundwork already established for the Presidential Scholars Program. I'll join Craig in asking you to please consider donating, giving, contributing to this outstanding program. We need your support to ensure that we can offer not only scholarship support, but the other wraparound services so critical to the success of this student population. We know this formula works. We just need to get the financial support to make it happen. Again, thank you for joining us. This concludes our program.